chapters 25, 26, and 27. James didn't want the earthworm and the centipede to get into another argument, so he quickly said to the earthworm, "Tell me, do you play any kind of music?" "No, but I do other things, some of which are really quite extraordinary," the earthworm said, brightening. "Such as what?" asked James. "Well," the earthworm said, "next time you stand in a field or in a garden and look around you, then just remember this, that every grain of soil upon the surface of the land, every tiny little bit of soil that you see, has actually passed through the body of an earthworm during the last few years. Isn't that wonderful?" "It's not possible," said James. "My dear boy, it's a fact." "You mean you actually swallow soil?" "Like mad," the earthworm said proudly. "In one end and out the other." "But what's the point?" "What do you mean, what's the point?" "Why do you do it?" "We do it for the farmers. It makes the soil nice and light and crumbly so that things will grow well in it. If you really want to know, the farmers couldn't do it without us. We are essential. We are vital, so it is only natural that the farmer should love us. He loves us even more, I believe, than he loves the ladybug." "The ladybug?" said James, turning to her. "Do they love you too?" "I'm told they do," the sweet ladybug answered modestly, blushing all over. "In fact, I understand that in some places the farmers love us so much that they go out and buy live ladybugs by the sackful to take them home and set them free in their fields. They are very pleased when they have lots of ladybugs in their fields." "But why?" James asked. "Because we gobble up all the nasty little insects that are gobbling up all the farmers' crops. It helps enormously, and we ourselves don't charge a penny for our service." "I think you are wonderful," James told her. "Can I ask you one special question?" "Please do." "Well, is it really true that I can tell how old a ladybug is by counting her spots?" "Oh, no, that's just a children's story," the ladybug said. "We never change our spots. Some of us, of course, are born with more spots than others, but we never change them. The number of spots that a ladybug has is simply a way of showing which branch of the family she belongs to. I, for example, as you can see, am a 9-spotted ladybug. I am very lucky. It is a fine thing to be." "It is indeed," said James, gazing at the beautiful scarlet shell with the 9 black spots on it. "On the other hand," the ladybug went on, "some of my less fortunate relatives have no more than 2 spots altogether on their shells. Can you imagine that? They are called 2-spotted ladybugs, and very common and ill-mannered they are, I regret to say. And then, of course, you have the 5-spotted ladybugs as well. They are much nicer than the 2-spotted ones, although I myself find them a trifle too saucy for my taste." "But they are all loved," said James. "Yes," the ladybug answered quietly. "They are all loved." "It seems that almost everyone around here is loved," said James. "How nice is this?" "Not me," cried the centipede happily. "I'm a pest, and I'm proud of it. Oh, I am such a shocking, dreadful pest." "Hear, hear," the earthworm said. "But what about you, Miss Spider?" asked James. "Aren't you also much loved in the world?" "Alas, no," Miss Spider answered, sighing long and loud. "I am not loved at all. And yet I do nothing but good. All day long I catch flies, mosquitoes in my webs. I am a decent person." "I know you are," said James. "It is very unfair the way that spiders are treated," Miss Spider went on. "Why, only last week, your own horrible Aunt Sponge flushed my poor dear father down the plug hole in the bathtub." "Oh, how awful!" cried James. I watched the whole thing from a corner up in the ceiling, Miss Spider murmured. It was ghastly. We never saw him again. A large tear rolled down her cheek and fell with a splash on the floor. But is it not very unlucky to kill a spider? James inquired, looking around at the others. Of course it's unlucky to kill a spider, shouted the centipede. It's about the unluckiest thing anyone can do. Look what happened to Aunt Sponge after she'd done that. Bump! We all felt it, didn't we, as the peach went over her? Oh, what a lovely bump that must have been for you, Miss Spider. It was very satisfactory, Miss Spider answered. Chapter 26. The centipede, who had begun dancing wildly, had suddenly gone too close to the downward curving edge of the peach, and for 3 awful seconds he had stood teetering on the brink, swinging his legs frantically in circles in an effort to stop himself from falling over backward into space. But before anyone could reach him, down he went. He gave a shriek of terror as he fell, and the others, rushing to the side and peering over, saw his poor long body tumbling over and over through the air, getting smaller and smaller until it was out of sight. "Silkworm!" yelled James. "Quick, start spinning!" The silkworm sighed, for she was still very tired from spinning all the silk for the seagulls, but she did what she was told. "I'm going down after him," cried James, grabbing the silk string as it started coming out of the silkworm, and tying the end to his waist. "The rest of you hold on to Silkworm so I don't pull her over with me. And later on, if you feel 3 tugs on the string, start hauling me up again." He jumped, and he went tumbling down after the centipede, down, 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 toward the sea below, and you can imagine how quickly the silkworm had to spin to keep up with the speed of his fall. "Oh, we'll never see either of them again," cried the ladybug. Oh dear, just when we were all so happy too." Miss Spider, the glowworm, and the ladybug all began to cry. So did the earthworm. "I don't care a bit about the centipede," the earthworm sobbed, "but I really did love that little boy." Very softly, the old green grasshopper started to play the funeral march on his violin, and by the time he had finished, everyone, including himself, was in a flood of tears. Suddenly, there came 3 sharp tugs on the rope. "Pull!" shouted the old green grasshopper. "Everyone, get behind me and pull." There was about a mile of string to be hauled in, but they all worked like mad, and in the end, over the side of the peach, there appeared a dripping wet James and a dripping wet centipede, clinging to him tightly with all 42 of his legs. "He saved me!" gasped the centipede. "He swam around in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean until he found me." "My dear boy," the old green grasshopper said, patting James on the back, "I do congratulate you." "My boots!" cried the centipede. "Just look at my precious boots. They are ruined by water." "Be quiet," the earthworm said. "You are lucky to be alive." "Are we still going up and up?" asked James. "Oh, we certainly are," answered the old green grasshopper, "and it's beginning to get dark. I know it'll be night soon. Why don't we all go down below and keep warm until tomorrow morning?" Miss Spider suggested. "No," the old green grasshopper said. "I think that would be unwise. It will be safer if we all stay up here through the night to keep watch. Then, if anything happens, we shall, anyway, be ready for it." Chapter 27. James Henry Trotter and his companions crouched close together on the top of the peach as the night began closing in around them. Clouds like mountains towered high above their heads on all sides. Mysterious, menacing, overwhelming. Gradually, it grew darker and darker, and then a pale 3/4 moon came up over the tops of the clouds and cast an eerie light over the whole scene. The giant peach swayed gently from side to side as it floated along, and the hundreds of silky white strings going upward from its stem were shining beautifully in the moonlight. So also was the great flock of seagulls overhead. There was not a sound anywhere. Traveling upon the peach was not in the least like traveling in an airplane. The airplane comes clattering and roaring through the sky, and whatever might be lurking secretly up there in the great cloud mountains goes running for cover as it approaches. That is why people who travel in airplanes never see anything. But the peach? Ah, yes, the peach was a soft, stealthy traveler, making no noise at all as it floated along. And several times during the long, silent night ride, high up over the middle of the ocean in the moonlight, James and his friends saw things that no one had ever seen before. Once, as they drifted silently past a massive white cloud, they saw on the top of it a group of strange, tall, wispy-looking things that were about twice the height of ordinary men. They were not easy to see at first because they were almost as white as the cloud itself. But as the peach sailed closer, it became obvious that these things were actually living creatures. Tall, wispy, shadowy white creatures who looked as though they were made out of a mixture of cotton wool and candy floss and thin white hairs. "Oh," the ladybug said, "I don't like this at all." "Shh," James whispered back. "Don't let them hear you. They must be cloud men." "Cloud men?" they murmured, huddling closer together for comfort. "Oh dear, oh dear." "I'm glad I'm blind and I can't see them," the earthworm said. "Or I would probably scream." "I hope they don't turn around and see us," Miss Spider stammered. "Do you think they would eat us?" the earthworm asked. "They would eat you," the centipede answered, grinning. "They would cut you up like salami and eat you in thin slices." The poor earthworm began to quiver all over with fright. "But what are they doing?" the old green grasshopper whispered. "I don't know," James answered softly. "Let's see and watch." The cloudmen were all standing in a group, and they were doing something peculiar with their hands. First, they would reach out, all of them at once, and grab handfuls of clouds. Then they would roll these handfuls of clouds in their fingers until they turned them into what looked like a larger white marble. Then they would toss the marbles to one side and quickly grab more bits of cloud and start over again. It was all very silent and mysterious. The pile of marbles beside them kept growing larger and larger. Soon there was a truckload of them at least. "Oh, they must be absolutely mad," the centipede said. "There's nothing to be afraid of here." "Be quiet, you pest," the earthworm whispered. "We shall all be eaten if they see us." But the cloudmen were much too busy with what they were doing to have noticed the great peach floating silently behind them. Then the watchers on the peach saw one of the cloudmen raising his long, wispy arms above his head, and they heard him shouting, "All right, boys, that's enough. Get the shovels." And all the cloudmen immediately let out a strange, high-pitched whoop of joy and started jumping up and down and waving their arms in the air. Then they picked up enormous shovels and rushed over to the pile of marbles and began shoveling them as fast as they could over the side of the cloud, into space. "Down they go," they chanted as they all worked. "Down they go, hail and snow, freezes and sneezes and noses will blow." "It's hailstones," whispered James excitedly. "They've been making hailstones, and now they are showering them down onto the people in the world below." "Hailstones?" the centipede said. "That's ridiculous. This is summertime. You don't have hailstones in summertime." "They're practicing for winter," James told him. "I don't believe it," shouted the centipede, raising his voice. "Shh," the others whispered. And James said softly, "For heaven's sake, centipede, don't make so much noise." The centipede roared with laughter. "Those cloud men can't hear us," he cried. "They're deaf as doorknobs. You watch." And before anyone could stop him, he had cupped his front feet to his mouth and started yelling at the cloudmen as loud as he could. "Hey!" he yelled. "What on earth do you think you're doing over there?" The effect was immediate. The Cloudmen jumped around as if they had been stung by wasps, and when they saw the great golden peach floating past them, not 50 yards away in the sky, they gave a yelp of surprise and dropped their shovels to the ground. And there they stood, with the moonlight streaming down all over them, absolutely motionless, like a group of tall, white, hairy statues, staring and staring at the gigantic fruit as it went sailing by. The passengers on the peach, all except the centipede, sat frozen with terror, looking back at the Cloudmen and wondering what was going to happen next. "Now you've done it, you loathsome pest," whispered the earthworm to the centipede. "I'm not frightened of them," shouted the centipede. And to show everybody once again that he wasn't, he stood up his full height and started dancing about and making silly faces at the Cloudmen with all 42 of his legs. This infuriated the Cloudmen beyond belief. All at once they spun around and grabbed great handfuls of hailstones and rushed to the edge of the cloud and started throwing them at the peach, shrieking with fury all the time. "Look out," cried James. "Quick, lie down, lie flat on the deck." It was lucky they did. A large hailstone can hurt you as much as a rock or a lump of lead if it is thrown hard enough. And my goodness, how those Cloudmen could throw. The hailstones came whizzing through the air like bullets from a gun, and James could hear them smashing against the sides of the peach and burrowing themselves into the peach flesh with horrible squelching noises, plop, 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 and ping, 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 as they bounced off the poor ladybug's shell because she couldn't lie as flat as the others. So here they are. Here's the Cloudmen making hailstones, and now they're being thrown at the peach. And then, crack, as one of them hit the centipede right on the nose, and crack again as another one hit him somewhere else. "Ow!" he cried. "Ow! Stop! Stop! Stop!" But the Cloudmen had no intention of stopping. James could see them rushing about on the cloud like a lot of huge, hairy ghosts, picking up hailstones from the pile, dashing to the edge of the cloud, hurling the hailstones at the peach, dashing back again to get more, and then, when the pile of stones was gone, they simply grabbed handfuls of cloud and made as many more as they wanted, and much bigger ones now, some of them as large as cannonballs. "Quickly," James cried, "down the tunnel or we'll all be wiped out." There was a rush for the tunnel entrance, and half a minute later everybody was safely downstairs, inside the stone of the peach, trembling with fright and listening to the noise of the hailstones as they came crashing against the side of the peach. "I'm a wreck," groaned the centipede. "I am wounded all over." "It serves you right," said the earthworm. "Would somebody kindly look and see if my shell is cracked?" the ladybug said. "Give us some light," shouted the old green grasshopper. "I can't," wailed the glowworm. "They've broken my bulb." "Then put in another," the centipede said. "Be quiet a moment," said James. "Listen, I do believe they are not hitting us anymore." They all stopped talking and listened. Yes, the noise had ceased. The hailstones were no longer smashing against the peach. "We've left them behind. The seagulls must have pulled us away out of danger. Hooray! Let's go up and see." Cautiously, with James going first, they all climbed back up the tunnel. James poked his head out and looked around. "It's all clear," he called. "I can't see them anywhere." It's the end. See you tomorrow.